Welcome back to the Unanimous Decision Podcast. I'm your host, D. Palm. Follow me on Twitter at DPalm66. Follow the show on Twitter at UDPod. Follow our entire network at the MTR Network. We got everything for you. Television reviews, comic reviews, movie reviews, politics, gaming, and of course, we've cornered the market on sports now as well. You found us, don't lose us. Make sure you subscribe to the iTunes Store and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Make sure you leave that 5-star review in the iTunes Store. We've got one brand new iTunes review. It is from the Grand Shucket, and it says one of the best sports podcasts you could find. Add this to your podcast rotation. The passion D-Palm has for comics, comic book movies burns equally bright for sports. I love this podcast. Give it a listen. You won't regret it. Anthony at the Great Uncle Bob on Twitter, and he's from the Grand Shucket podcast. Follow them on Twitter at Grand Shucket. Thanks for the review. Like I said, this is a policy. You leave 5 stars, read it on the air. Not going to go through the whole preamble today. I know you guys probably heard it a bunch over podcast week. I'm really excited we got to do that. Big thanks to Chris and the rest of the MTR crew for helping me pull that off. And a big thanks to all of our guests who came through. And I'm in love with you guys, man. This is like the second time I've recorded this podcast. So I recorded it on Sunday. Everything, technology and things happened. They're taken care of now. But in the things happening, I may or may not have lost that audio. So we're going to run it back. We're going to do it for it again. It's the second time for me, first time for you. It's going to be just as good, if not better. And we got to start with the top story of the weekend. The Great White Hype live action reenactment actually occurred. I wasn't one of the people who thought that they were going to find some way to fleece people out of this deal. But even as McGregor and Floyd were walking in the ring, and let's be very clear, I wasn't watching this fight. I refused. I was watching on Twitter, but I was catching GIFs and people's commentary, but I wasn't watching the fight. I've seen the fight since because there's no way I'm giving my money, but I did want to see the spectacle, and a spectacle it was. They created a situation where it's perfect. Everybody gets their money. Floyd gets win number 50. Conor gets stopped before he gets stopped because that knockout wasn't coming. But the plan was never to let Conor get knocked out. If you let Conor get knocked out, then it's a lose. It's that short-sighted money. And the thing that tells you, there are two things that tell you that it's long-sighted money here. Let's see the next boxer who takes Conor up on his challenge. Let's see if that fight's promoted by Floyd's company. I'd bet it was. I bet it will be. Because now Conor's got all the credit in the world. He's the guy who says, I stood toe-to-toe for 10 rounds with Floyd Mayweather. A boxing genius. Never mind the fact that Floyd didn't throw a punch in the first 2 rounds. Never mind the fact that Conor was being allowed to hit on jabs and uppercuts that haven't touched Floyd in 15 years. This was a work. It wasn't a work in the fact that the punches weren't real. The punches were super real. When Floyd turned it on and decided to pummel that poor little Irishman, it was a wrap. And I say little because, as a pejorative, because Floyd is a smaller man than Conor McGregor, and all during the lead up you heard, Conor's got a punch chance, Conor's got a punch chance. I've watched the fight. Conor thought he uncorked a very real uppercut in that first round, and he saw Floyd was just looking at him, and I think at that moment, Conor realized what it really was. This isn't a fight. This is a spectacle. If Floyd wanted to end this fight in the 4th round, it could have been ended then. But Floyd's a showman. I talked about this with Chris ahead of the third part of the Peter Parker character corner this past weekend. But when they did this the opposite way, when I think it was James Toney fought Randy Couture, Couture wasted no time, gave no fucks, blast, double, takedown, ground and pound. It was a wrap. That was cool, and that was, he's out of his element. That was fine. Floyd is a showman. And he said, let me give the people what they want. Let me give people what they need. Let me give them 10 rounds. I'll bob and weave. Oh, the little man tagged me a couple times because he can't hurt me. People said, the smaller gloves are going to benefit Conor McGregor. Bro, you just gave Floyd Mayweather smaller gloves. That Floyd's got those on too. This is a guy who knocks people out for a living with his hands. And yes, I've heard they are different sports. You're right. This fight shouldn't have happened. The New York Association of Ringside Physicians actually came out and said that. They said they were surprised that Las Vegas would sanction such an atrocity. Because that's what it could have been. It could have been, had Floyd gone out and said, I'm really mad, I'm going to go out and send a message, I'm going to go out and stand tall for boxing, he could have destroyed Conor McGregor. It wouldn't have lasted 2 rounds. But he didn't. Floyd's a businessman. Floyd's a reprehensible human being. And honestly, between him and Conor, it's a race to the bottom. Though I'll tell you this. A lot of people want to bag on Conor. Conor played his heel role perfectly. Whether he believed things he was saying or not, I don't actually care. He still said them. That makes him a pretty fucking terrible person. But, like, for people who want to equate McGregor and Mayweather, I think McGregor's a bad guy. I know Mayweather's a bad guy. So in all this praise of his business acumen and the in-ring boxing genius, let no sight go beyond the fact that Floyd Mayweather is the lowest of the low when it comes to human beings. But him having no sense of pride, decorum, or self-respect is what allowed him to facilitate, to agree to, and to make money off of this embarrassment that struck our nation on Saturday. Maybe you paid for it. Maybe you got your $100 worth and you feel good about that. Hey, more power to you. If you were entertained, I'm entertained for you, my dude. It wasn't my money. What do I really care? But if you're one of those fans who watched that fight and for some twisted reason want to come out and say, oh, Conor had him on the ropes or Conor had a puncher's chance, let's stop the false narrative. Let's stop lying to ourselves. Let's stop handing out participation trophies for mediocrity. Isn't that what the old guard says? We're a participation trophy generation. Keep in mind, when you hear that your grandparents and parents weren't actually that good at all the sports they played. They, too, got participation trophies. But that's what this is. This is, even discussing it as a legitimate fight, is a participation trophy in and of itself, because all Conor did was go out there, throw his hands around, get tired, and then get his wig rocked. I told someone on Twitter that I said I really wish that after the fight, Mayweather unlaced his gloves, reached in the announcer's breast pocket and pulled out on some David Blaine shit, TKO in 10. Because that's how predictable it could have been. He could have decided to do that then, and no one could have stopped him or really told him otherwise. So the winners from this fight, Floyd Mayweather, obviously, massive payday. Conor McGregor, more than you think, because he's never stepping foot in an octagon again. And that brings us to the loser of the fight. And his name is one Mr. Dana White. Long-time listeners, not even long-time listeners, like partial-time listeners, will remember we had Chris on earlier in this year, and we discussed how the UFC business model was, in short, fucked. And that was before their light heavyweight champion got busted for steroids again. And their lightweight champion, who's never defended his belt, made $10 million for one fight. People who say, oh no, Conor, this was just a dalliance. If you're Conor McGregor and you made that much money for a boxing match, would you ever step foot in a cage again? The only way Conor McGregor comes back to the UFC is if Dana White gives him ownership points, and at this point, I'm not entirely sure Dana White can. We've all seen what's gone on behind the scenes at the UFC and Zuffa the last couple months. Does Dana White still have that pull? The UFC, let's talk about what it is. What it wants to be. What it builds itself as. It builds itself as ultimate fighting competition. What it really is a marriage of boxing and professional wrestling. And what are those two? One sport, one work, whatever. What do they have in common? Though honestly, with the seediness in boxing, I can have that conversation. They have personalities. They have names. It's fun to watch the flyweights go out there and beat the hell out of each other. I will watch that in UFC undercard. But for the casual UFC viewer, for the ones who showed up for John Jones Cormier, for the ones who would have shown up for John Jones Brock Lesnar, for the ones who showed up for Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, who's next? The light heavyweight division used to be the crown jewel of the UFC. Chuck Liddell, Forrest Griffin. The names go on. Rampage. This was the division to be in. And now, you've got an interim champion who has been summarily dismissed twice on large stages. Not in close fights, not in decisions, in beatings. And you've got a deposed champion who may not fight for 4 years. Because those of you keeping track at home, that's the second time he's popped for PEDs. And I'm one of those people who Jokes about the steroid era in baseball, says greenies in football were good. But I'll tell you this is the one sport where I get fairly serious about PED use. Not of some twisted moral sense of right and wrong. I don't give a damn. I do know that if you are taking something that increases your ability to strike and harm, and you're in a cage with someone, you could kill someone. Someone could die in that cage. It's not a couple extra home runs. It's not Roger Ramirez could erase from record books. It's John Jones putting his foot through someone's chest. It's the kind of edge you can't have. And I'm not willing to even float the idea that he should be allowed to fight. If I never see John Jones fight in MMA capacity again, I'll be 100% fine with that. He's a fun guy to watch. I'm a huge fan of his. But if we're going to be doing this, you can't be trusted in the ring. Sorry. It's just not safe for everyone around you, and it's not that important. But let's talk about the UFC. Like I said, the personalities. Conor McGregor's done. He's never coming back. Ever. Ever. People tell you love it. Ever. You know what Conor McGregor loves? Money. That's why he floated this Floyd fight. That's why he pushed for the Floyd fight. That's why he boxed Dana White out of the Floyd fight. Notice, there is no UFC signage on anything involving this fight that just happened. The greatest spectacle ever. Maybe it was. But what it was a giant tactical misstep by the UFC. Why was there no MMA fight in the undercard? This is supposed to be a meeting of the worlds, right? Let's make the worlds meet. You could have brought on some new MMA fans. But no. You took your biggest star to your brightest stage, you watched him get sunned, and he's never coming home. So Dana White turns around and says, well, guess what? I still got the strength of the UFC behind me. Oh, shit. The light heavyweight division hasn't been developed outside of John Jones, and Cormier beat all the challengers, and John Jones embarrassed Cormier. But Cormier's got the belt now. Oh, well, let's go to the lightweights. Oh, God. We've let the division stagnate because we were too busy catering to Conor McGregor's flights of fancy. Oh, the women division, that's been the bellwether. Oh, as a company, we abandoned the women division once Ronda lost. Which is a damn shame because there's talent down there. There's personality down there. There are stars down there. Mighty Mouse might be the best fighter in the world. He's fighting next weekend. Why wasn't that promo run right ahead of Mayweather-McGregor? Why weren't shots at him in the crowd? Because this was UFC trying to do something that they always wanted to do, but I think that they got tricked by a much more savvy businessman in Floyd Mayweather. They wanted to appear legitimate. They wanted to say, we're not the back rooms you remember. We're not the company that couldn't get licensed in New York. We are the big time. We are the big deal. We are on the biggest stage. Except you, because of the way your company's set up, it's one of your fighters, but you've got no stake. You've got no gain. And watching a non-boxer try to box relegates you back into the sideshow era you were trying to escape. It's not unfixable, but it's a problem. The UFC has no stars. And when your combat sport has no draw, selling combat's tough. Selling people walking into a cage to hurt each other, it's a tough sell. But selling personality, that's the reason the Ultimate Fighter works. There's a reason why these things work, where they give the fighters more personality. When you put the guys on commentary and they flourish, get behind those personalities. Get behind the stories of a Mighty Mouse who's got all this outside the ring personality and life and joie de vivre and all this stuff that he can bring to widen the tent that is the UFC. But no, Dana White found his favorites and he bet on the wrong horses. And we'll see just how badly it affects the UFC, but I think it's going to be much more bad than good, and I think we haven't seen the end of what the problems are going to be. Speaking of problems, there's a man named Art Briles. And for those of you who don't listen to this podcast or live under some sort of rock, Art Briles used to be the head coach at Baylor. When he was the head coach at Baylor, a lot of things happened, making him no longer be the head coach at Baylor and starting a Title IX federal investigation into the school and the behavior of himself at that school. Since then, his name's become pretty much an anathema. You can't whisper it without getting in trouble. I think Lane Kiffin had floated using some of Briles' ideas this season on his team. Immediate rebukes from all sides. Hell, Briles' kid's still on staff at Baylor, and I'm not sure that's a great idea, personally. Because it was systemic. He was the figurehead and he took the fall, but it was a systemic failing. Not just of the football program, but of the entire school. Well, some people didn't agree. The Hamilton Tiger Cats of the CFL announced that they were hiring former Baylor coach Art Briles as assistant earlier Monday. 4 hours later, the CFL said, nah, bruh. CFL statement was curt and to the point. Art Briles will no longer be joining the Hamilton Tiger Cats as a coach. We came to this decision this evening following a lengthy discussion between the league and the Hamilton organization. We can wish Mr. Briles all the best in his future endeavors. There was a briefer statement earlier today saying that the league was in continuing discussion with the Tiger Hats about the new hire. People say, oh, give the man a chance. We're 1 year removed from being fired for overseeing a program during a period in which its players were accused of committing up to 52 sexual assaults, most of which were ripped under the rug, not just by the school, but by local police departments. Art Briles has no business on a football field. I repeat, Art Briles has no business on a football field, and the CFL should not be praised for getting him off of theirs. Reporting continues, and the CFL could have stopped this mess on their own terms because the owner of the Tiger Cats, CEO, Scott Mitchell said, hey, the league's known for weeks. They've known about the impending hire, they approved all the paperwork, and they're only reacting to this. The quotes are terrible from Mitchell, but he downplays all the sexual assaults. He says it doesn't take away the people feel strongly that Art Briles is a good person, deserves the opportunity to be a coach. I'm glad that the voice of the people and the voice of concerned citizens, maybe, I don't know. Like, I don't want to say like good taste kept him out of the CFL. And yeah, I think maybe Art Briles one day should be able to get a job. It's not today. We're not there. The contrition, the dust hasn't even settled at Baylor. And he's looking for a job? Houston Net just cost Hugh Freeze his job because he can't get a job and he didn't oversee a rape factory. So yeah, he will make a living one day. I'm not going to deny that. If he doesn't make a living playing football or coaching football, will I shed one tear? Absolutely fucking not. Today also saw the return of Maria Sharapova to tennis courts everywhere. For those of you wondering who or what she is, excellent question. She is a mildly successful but largely viewed as overrated tennis player who's been off the circuit for a while. And if you listen to some of the coverage of the Open, you'd think it was due to some debilitating injury or devastating life change, but no. Maria Sharapova was caught doping. She's been welcomed back with open arms, and her past transgressions are barely mentioned on there. Interesting. I'll let that one just sit. I think that one kind of speaks for itself. Like most of these, I feel like I need to walk like listeners and myself even through. But that one, you just, there's a little saying. It's one. And, yeah. We'll move on from that. NBA still finding ways to take over headlines, even though baseball is supposed to be heading the postseason. I think they've got like a series that they play. I don't know. Also, NFL is just winding up. That reminds me, if you're listening to this podcast, that means you enjoy the things I do. If you enjoy the things I do, get a chance to win some money off of me. Make sure you go to our Facebook group for the MTR Network. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at dpalm66. I'll be announcing the link will be sent out for our NFL Pick'em this year. That's right, we're doing Pick'em against the spread. We're going to do a fantasy league, but things are very complicated to do fantasy league. Much easier to do Pick'em. I'll be doing prizes. I'll be doing winners. We'll try to divide the season up. There'll be some way for me to get you stuff if you win, which you won't because I'm playing too, and so I'm going to get myself a bunch of really, really cool shit. That's how I get down. So, back to the NFL. Not being able to hold their headlines in August because the NBA is back in town. There's a massive trade announced between the beginning of podcast week and the show. The Cleveland Cavaliers will be sending Kyrie Irving, who is openly disgruntled, to the Celtics for Isaiah Thomas, for, I want to say it also involved Jay Crowder, Ante Zidic, and an unprotected 2018 first-round pick from Brooklyn. Now, for those of you who are big NBA heads like me, you'll remember that the Celtics would not part with that Brooklyn pick to land Jimmy Butler at the trade deadline or after the season. The questions abound. Why not then? Why now? People said, oh, look at the Cavs are giving up on this trade. They're giving away Kyrie. Hey, man, on its face, this trade is great. You've got Isaiah Thomas on a very cheap deal. You've got I don't want to screw this up because I want to make sure I get all the players right. Jay Crowder, who I think is a great two-way player and can be a defensive force in the second unit for the Cavs. And you've got a 2018 Nets pick, which people say, oh, that's building for the future. That could be an all-star in February. You get to the break, everyone's in wherever city they're going to be in, they're having drinks, and someone talks to this new Cavs GM who apparently has got the juice because he took Danny Ainge out behind the woodshed. Look, if Danny Ainge wants to tell me that his plan has been to amass assets and turn them into future superstars, that's a great plan. But then why are we burning assets on Kyrie Irving? Why, after this trade, would you have 4 players from a team that won the East in wins last year? Is it Danny Ainge and the Boston faithful getting restless? Or is there a bigger plan in place? All I know is it looked like the Cavs came out on top, but it may not come out anywhere. The Cavaliers have expressed concern about the injured hip of Isaiah Thomas. You'll remember he didn't finish out the series versus the Cavs because of this injury. They tried to treat it with rest and rehab. The Cavaliers front office and medical staff is not happy with what they're seeing. They're now possibly asking for further and additional payment for it. We're talking more players, more draft picks, more compensatory considerations. The question becomes now, how bad do you want this man gone? Because if I'm Boston, I'm Danny Ainge, this trade happens and you're kicking out a guy who played the day after he buried his sister for you in the playoffs. People want to tell you, they burned Isaiah Thomas's jersey and he got traded. So when they ask you, why aren't players loyal to teams? Why don't you like fans? This is why. Fans are terrible and teams are two-faced and duplicitous. There's going to be a lockout in 2021 because of the existing deals that the league has in place. I guarantee they'll be seen as the unbending players and the reasonable owners. They figured this out last lockout when the NFL got a deal from DirecTV and from all their television partners saying they'll still get their money even if the games aren't played. They have no reason to play the games. They have no incentive to bend to player desires. Good luck to Morris Smith. I've been unimpressed so far. Maybe I'm wrong. Prove me wrong. I want to be wrong about this. I want to see the players get some wins. But that was one of the reasons why Paul Tagliabue, to this day, is not in the NFL Hall of Fame. They viewed his relationship with Gene Upshaw, the head of the Player Association, as too buddy-buddy. As too, we all win. That's why Raj keeps his job, because the owners are not on some we all win. The owners are on some fuck them. The owners are on some fuck them. They want as much money as possible for as little give out. That's the reason why the NFL was openly abdicated their tax-free exemption this offseason. That means they no longer have to report Raj's salary. I hate him, you hate him, a lot of the players hate him. But NFL team values have doubled since 2011. But as far as they're concerned, the owners, he's doing his job and he's doing it damn well, and they don't want to rock that boat. More accurately, that gravy train. Stafford's back. I know some Detroit Lion fans who are less than pleased with the news that broke tonight. Matt Stafford signing the largest contract in NFL history. I want to read these terms, man. This is ridiculous. Ian Rappaport, the NFL is reporting that the Lions and Matthew Stafford, hope you're sitting down, have agreed on a 5-year extension worth $135 million. Now, of course, we all know NFL contracts. Incentives, timelines are weird. But, this is ridiculous. Yeah, people say, Stafford, look at the numbers, man. He broke NFL records. He's got Lion single-season records for passing yards, completions, touchdowns. That happened during the 11 season, where all the passing stats went crazy, where Cam Newton came out and had, I think, the greatest passing rookie season of all time. So let's take that with a grain of salt. But, hey, Stafford is what he is. He's a big-arm quarterback who I'm obviously a bigger fan of than most because of what he did in Athens, but highest paid player of all time. And I know that's not going to last. I know it's going to change. It's blah, blah, it's a shifting sand. But he's 29 years old. He had a decent year last year. 5 for 135. Seems a little strong to me, but it's not my money. And that's kind of the cool thing about this is we can debate back and forth, left and right, who should or should not have money, but we all know the world doesn't work on deserve. And tip of the cap to Matt for getting his money. Just remember, this is the Lions. So if you decide to retire, they'll probably ask for their money back. Shout out to Calvin and Barry Sanders. Now, the flip side of that, heartwarming NFL coin, Ezekiel Elliott. Got 6 games for alleged domestic violence. It's one of those situations where you can't trust anyone because Ezekiel Elliott's proven himself to be a scumbag and lying about what happened to this woman. But at the same time, it's the NFL. I don't trust them either. They do seem to have done their due diligence, a year of investigation, independent of the police. They have the resources. It seems like they poured the time into it. We've seen Ezekiel Elliott's behavior during the investigation not lead its way to one to give him all that much of a benefit of the doubt. At the same time, NFL says 6 games. The NFLPA, of course, appeals. Ezekiel Elliott, of course, appeals. But what's interesting is they also hired Jeffrey Kessler. Jeffrey Kessler is no, we're here to make a deal attorney. Kessler was the one who represented Brady against the NFL. He's the one who fought the league in the antitrust suit. Like this is a big deal. This is someone who's putting in their heels for a long battle. Reports, according to Bleacher Report, say that people close to Ezekiel Elliott do not expect this to be overturned because they honestly had seen the legal team's best efforts, which basically amounted to maybe she fell. Kessler's a statement, though. That's we will not go quietly. And after all the backing Jerry decided to give Zeke early in this, he might need the backing and he might need it. He might need to save face for a lot more than just Ezekiel Elliott. Last week we saw a rally outside the NFL headquarters for Colin Kaepernick. There's been a rash of people saying that they were going to boycott the NFL this year. I'm here to tell you, gentle listener, that if you've chosen to boycott, more power to you. I will not be boycotting the NFL. So I didn't boycott when Ezekiel Elliott got 6 because he beat a woman. I didn't boycott when Greg Hardy got a job. I didn't boycott when Ray Rice, everything. I didn't boycott when they blackballed Michael Sam out of the league. The issue isn't blackballs. Because it's happened before. Dante Culpepper's last recorded stats and the reason he's not playing anymore, it's a very strange question. Look at some of the career backups, if you will. Colt McCoy's still in the NFL. Blackballing happens to black players more often than they'd like to admit. But no, this isn't a blackballing. It is a blackballing, but it's not. This isn't one that stops at the field. And that's the one that gets me here, is because I saw so many people saying, we just want him signing, we want him to give a chance. And all I want to tell those people is that's not why he kneeled, man. He didn't kneel to get a job. He told the reporter at the time, this could be the end of my career. He made peace with that. He kneeled to bring attention to larger societal issues. And when the conversation stops at, why doesn't Colin Kaepernick have a job? You've done the job, the bidding of those who would like to obfuscate his point. Those who want to say, this is all about football and blah, 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 stick to sports. It's about sports. Colin Kaepernick's message was, it's not about sports. It's bigger than sports, and it's caught on around the league. In Cleveland, you saw 11 players for the first time together, united, kneel. When asked about it, they said they were praying for the country. No outrage. None. No outrage. Is it partially because maybe there was a white player kneeling with them? Maybe. But it's also because, hey, if you say you're praying, you can get away with a lot, unless you're a Muslim. If you're saying I'm kneeling in prayer, which is the same thing Tim Tebow used to do touchdowns. They won't really touch you. But that tells you that this kneeling, that this issue with Kaepernick was never about the anthem or the flag. Because if it's okay to do something else during that time, why does the line get drawn with prayer? It doesn't. What Colin Kaepernick did was made people reckon with what he was actually saying and what was easier than ever dealing with it or addressing it or pretending like it actually mattered to them. Look at this disrespectful asshole disrespecting our flag and our anthem. I wish he'd stick to sports. There's horrible flooding in my hometown, the city I was born in, Houston right now. Send money, send help. Don't go to the Red Cross. There's other direct ways. I know there's lots of links flying out there. Try to find a verified one that's going to get money to people who need it. I know JJ Watt's doing an amazing GoFundMe. He raised, I think it was 250 grand as original plan. He did that in 2 hours. So each time they hit, he just keeps increasing it. In less than 24 hours, he raised over $1 million. That's some of the stuff that is just great. It's unifying. I've even seen dedicated real life football dudes calling out certain megachurch owners in Houston for their behavior. No one's telling them to stick to sports. Because in times of catastrophe, it's important to recognize that athletes and sports figures have a platform that they can use to get the message out and to inform and to educate and to help those who need help. Why is it so hard to understand that Colin Kaepernick sees his community in need of help? Why is it so hard to reconcile that this is a crisis point that Colin's recognized, that many have recognized? Because it's too divisive to say stop killing unarmed black people. But they do want you to pray for Houston. I want you to do it for Houston, and I want you to keep speaking up against the bullshit that Colin's speaking out against. Because he's not going to play this year. If you're boycotting until he gets a job, man, kiss the NFL goodbye for you for a minute. But if we can push his message forward, if we can challenge those who say, he's not playing because he's kneeling, I say, no, he's not playing because you don't care about black people getting killed. Stick to sports. Never have. Never will. This is UD Pod. That was your show. This is your outro. See y'all next week.